Hey y'all, happy Thursday and welcome to the webinar. I'm gonna give everybody a couple of minutes because we had to change links for this webinar. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to sprinkle in. I just sent out a new link and I'm also 39 weeks pregnant today. So while we wait on people to join, I'm going to just give y'all some pregnancy updates because it's been a while since I have done that. Crazy that we're 39 weeks already. I am sitting on my birth ball, so if you see me moving from side to side, it is because I am trying to practice what I preach, which is not always easy because, pregnancy is a thing. And I'm also going to set up this. So if I'm looking off in any other direction, it is because I'm setting up my notes really quickly to make sure that I get you guys all the information. All right. We'll give everybody one more minute to join and then we'll get started. I would love to know though, for those of you who are here, tell me where you're from, how many weeks you are, why you decided to join the webinar, whatever you want to share, put it in the chat so I can just see where we're all coming from. If you don't know, I'm in Texas for the time being. If you have not followed me on Instagram, we shared some special updates over there that we are moving across the country after this baby is born, which is wild. I do not recommend doing it, but if the Lord calls you to do it faster than you planned, then you just move sometimes, and that's what we're doing. But we're staying in Texas to have our baby because we love our birth team. And then shortly after the baby is born, we will be moving across the country back to where we're from. So that'll be fun. But all that to say, let's jump in and let's get started because I want to make sure that y'all have some time. If you have questions at the end, to get those answered, and then have a conversation and just share all the things. So this webinar, and actually I'm gonna send out this link one more time. That way, since we had to change it, the platform made it real weird for me to start the other one that I had reserved. So I'm just going to share this one more time and then we'll actually get started. No, okay, it's not going to let me be successful here. Okay, let's see where we're at in the chat. All right, cool. New link for webinar. All right, y'all. Thanks for your patience and flexibility. All right, let's jump in. So I'm super excited because over the last 4 years, I've had multiple children, but I've also supported almost 500 families. And in the process of supporting all of these families, a few things have continuously come up, especially recently. And so I decided that as we are in this launch week and also just really on baby watch, that it would be a good idea to do this webinar because I don't know when I'm going to be able to do another webinar. And it seems like some of the videos that I've been posting recently have been pretty popular for some of you on some of these topics. And so I wanted to just bring it all together and make it very succinct. If this is your first time watching me on this platform or even learning about this, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Chanel. I am a mom of almost 4. I am a doula. I've supported people in person and virtually across the world outside of the United States, which is even more amazing. And I really support families who want to have a very peaceful, beautiful, positive, empowering natural birth experience. And that does not require me to be in the room with them all the time. And so it's been really cool since the pandemic that through education and then also virtual coaching, I've been able to see a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today and just mindset shifts help families have the tools that they need so they can birth together. Y'all made the baby together, most likely. You're going to need to birth the baby together. Like, mom, you carrying the baby is one aspect of it. But in order for you to do your job, you need your partner to be on board and you need your partner to be able to support you appropriately. So, all that to say, let's jump in. This webinar is all about tips to having a faith-filled, family-centered, fearless birth. And those are the three things that really allow you to have the positive birth experiences that you desire. And it does not matter where you're at in terms of giving birth. You can give birth in a hospital, you can give birth in your home, you can give birth at a birth center. Regardless of where you're at, these three things, or these three principles, if you will, have to apply in order for you to feel confident doing what you are already designed to do. I am taking these same things into account. And I think the reason that these are so important and how I've seen a night and day difference is that we are inundated with so much information. Like, I'm sure that y'all understand what I'm saying. Between YouTube, Google, TikTok, Instagram, there's so many pieces of information. It can become very overwhelming because you're hearing so many people's voices. You have no idea where to start. Like, it's overwhelming. And I took the plunge of saying, okay, let me take, like, I know I teach things a certain way. And my husband and I have gone through my coursework for this pregnancy and for my previous pregnancy when I actually like created my coursework after my second baby was born. And maybe like I should just learn from somebody else and just get a different, like a fresh perspective. And when I tell y'all that I was like, whoa, this is not, like, birth education is not created equal, and it's also so different. And so you have to really make sure that you are finding material that aligns with you. Not that that course that I took was like not a good course. It just was not a good course for me. It did not align with me and how I learn and the types of things that like really resonate with me in terms of the type of birth experience that I want. So it is very important to find the voice that feels the most peaceful, that feels the most confident, that really feels like it's going to equip you for the type of experience that you're looking for. And these principles, the stuff that we're going to talk about today, it's also like my personal experience, my client's experience. It also applies to every type of birth. So whether you are having an unmedicated birth, a medicated birth, a VBAC, a C-section, all of these things apply in those situations, because I've had women who've had to change their birth plans to be C-sections. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is not a failed birth plan, but you still should feel empowered, supported, and faith-filled in each of those experiences as well. All right. So with all of that being said, let's jump in. I'm going to look down at my notes to make sure that I don't forget anything, because I can't screen share when I go live here. But there are going to be 5 different things that we talk about today. And I almost think about these as steps. Okay. So you don't have to do them in order, but I think it's also a very easy thing to do in this order if you choose. So make sure you have your notes out, take some notes. This will be saved so you can go back and rewatch it. But the more you can take notes on this now, the better. So step number 1, or tip number 1, is to fight your fears. Now, some of this may feel like fluff to y'all, but when I tell you, if you really take this advice, it will completely change your life. Like, not even just how you birth, it'll change your life. And I've seen and supported so many families that have completely transformed who they are as people and as parents from the type of birth experience that they had, because they learned how to trust themselves. They learned how to trust their intuition, and they learned how to overcome fears. And so the first thing that we have to do when we're thinking about having this really positive birth experience is to fight your fears. If you are allowing your fears to cripple you, to cause you so much anxiety that you feel paralyzed, you're going to feel that way in birth. Like there's just no doubt about it. Your fears will try to have more power over you than you have over yourself, but you cannot let them win. The first step in one of my like most popular approaches to how I support my clients, and every client needs something different, right? But with every single one of my clients, we have to start with their fears. And that is not just mom's fears because she's carrying a baby. That's also your partner's fears. You both have to be on the same page. If you are working through your fears, but your partner is not working through theirs, there's a good chance that you will take on their fears in labor because you're so confident and they're like, oh yeah, she's got it. She's got it. She's got it. I'm just going to follow her lead. But then you get into labor, you're going through the motions and it may be intense for you. And it may sound like it's intense for you, or it's painful, or it's not. Who knows? But then you look over at your partner and your partner's like, maybe we should go to the hospital right now. Like, babe, I think we should go to the hospital. And now all of a sudden you're filled with their anxiety and you're filled with their fears. And that doesn't help you because now you've started off in a confident way, but now you're back at square one because you don't feel like you can lean on or trust or be confident in the person who's supposed to be supporting you through this experience. So it's important that both of you fight your fears. Now, how do you fight your fears, right? It's like, okay, great, Chanel, let's talk about fears. How do I actually fight them? You have to fight them with facts. Just plain and simple. This is not a complicated approach. You have to fight your fears with facts. Fear is only going to be overcome with knowledge. Okay? It is a response. Fear is a response to the unknown, and your knowledge can actually help you get clarity and get confidence and overcome those fears. Some of the ways that you can overcome those fears are understanding the risks. So when you figure out what the facts are, let's say, for example, you're afraid of tearing, which is a very common fear. Okay, being afraid of tearing is normal. It's common. But if you continue to be afraid of tearing, the likelihood of you tearing is probably going to increase versus we figure out what the facts are. Okay, what are the facts about tearing? Well, tearing is very common when you are pushing in certain positions. Okay, that's a fact. What can I do about that? I can change the birthing position that I birth in to avoid or help avoid tearing. What are some other things that I can do? I can learn how to breathe my baby out. Because if I'm holding my breath and I'm counting to 10, I'm putting so much pressure on my pelvic floor that there's a good chance that all that pressure is going to cause a tear. Okay, cool. Now that I understand those facts, I have a little bit more control over what I can do, right? So you have the facts. You understand the risks of tearing because you understand what would increase your risk of tearing. And you also understand what will decrease your risk of tearing. And because of those facts, we can now rest assured and say, I'm going to do what's within my control and with what information I have to feel less scared about this because I know that I have control over some parts of this. Now, we cannot 100% foolproof reduce or prevent any single thing happening in our lives, especially not in birth, right? Because you have another human involved. But you can put yourself in the best possible situation when you overcome your fear with facts, with knowledge, because knowledge is power. When you understand the why and the how of a risk, it can help you feel more in control. When you understand the context of what's going on, let's say, for example, okay, I know that I'm birthing in a hospital, right? This is not me. I'm just saying this is an example. We're going back to the same example of tearing. Okay, I'm birthing in a hospital. I know my context of a hospital means there may be a little bit more pressure to hold my breath and count to 10. I know that my context is there's probably going to be a little bit more pressure of me pushing on my back. So what does that mean for me? That means that I'm going to need to talk to my team. I'm going to need to make sure that the provider, the nurses, my birth plan, all the things state very clearly what I will and will not do in this birth, unless there's a medical emergency, right? I do not want to push on my back. Let's communicate that very early so we don't have to argue in labor. I will not take coaching, or I do not need coaching because I've practiced breathing. Great. Now we're all on the same page. It is communicated. Your partner knows that. So that if somebody is trying to do something or force you to do something, they know how to advocate for you. Now you have context. The other thing is, what do we do to prepare for that, right? When you know something, you can do something about it. So now, what does that mean? Maybe I need to go see a pelvic floor therapist because they can help me and they are a professional and they can help me manually make sure I know how to push, make sure I know how to breathe properly, make sure I don't, cause myself to be too tight for labor. I can really stretch my pelvic floor, my perineum, all of those things. And now tearing doesn't feel so scary because now I'm doing things to set myself up for success. This applies to any fear that you have. You have to do the work. You have to do the research to understand what the true risk of your fear is. Somebody said in the chat, uterine rupture. As a VBAC mom, that is one fear that everybody tried to really instill in me. Oh, what if your water breaks and you have a dry birth? Or what if your uterus ruptures? Well, what if it doesn't? And if you look it up, if you start to do the research, I teach all my clients how to do this. But like, we don't go past, I'm not teaching y'all squats, I'm not teaching you breathing techniques until you get past this step, because I don't care how well you breathe. If you are not confident or you have not overcome your fears and you're not mentally prepared, none of the movements or breathing techniques that you do are going to matter. But going back to the uterine rupture, everybody was planting that in my head in my first VBAC. And I was giving birth out of the hospital. They thought I was like insane. I had to look up uterine rupture. Do you want to know the true risk of uterine rupture is less than like 1% to 2%. Less than 1% to 2% of women will rupture. Probably less than 1% actually. And the real increase happens when you are induced. So, and it's really still very low of the risk of uterine rupture. And so when I learned that, I'm like, okay, so max 2% of women are going to have uterine rupture. Like, why are we even having this conversation? Of course, it's a risk. It's a risk getting in your car and driving every single day. But am I going to sit here and like go into a panic attack about a uterine rupture when it's like less than 2% of women that happens to? And the women who do end up having that, some, it's because they got induced. You should not be using any sort of induction method because that can increase your risk of uterine rupture. So we don't need to be using Pitocin. We don't need to be using Cytotec, any of those things that would increase that risk. Okay. So like, you got to do your research. You got to, or find somebody to help you do the research, because just Googling is not really going to be good for you either, because Google's not a reliable source. So understand that. So step one, fact checks. Fact check your fears, fight your fears, and work through that first. Now, once we've done that, our second step, or tip number 2, is to get clear on your goals. What are your birth goals? And not just you, even though you are the main character here. Together, what do you and your partner or support person, whoever's going to be with you, what do y'all desire for this experience to look and feel like? Okay, is this going to be, I want to go to the hospital right away and get the epidural? Cool. Is it, I want to labor at home as long as possible so that we can like be in our place of peace and get to the hospital with just enough time to push out a baby? Great. Are you having a home birth? Like, do we want it to be peaceful? Do you want it to be filled with worship? Like, what is it? And this is a question that I ask all my clients, because I'm like, if I'm going to help you get this birth that you want, I got to know what it looks like. If your partner is going to help you advocate and support you in this birth, they got to know what it looks like. You can't just have this like picture in your mind. And if there's a video of somebody who's done what you want to do, like, use that as a resource. Use that as the picture. Hey, this is what I want. Or if you're watching a bunch of different, really positive birth videos, which if you haven't gone to my Instagram, I have a whole highlight of really positive birth stories and birth videos. You can take little bits and pieces of like, I really like this about this birth. I really like that about that birth. But y'all got to get clear on that, because just saying I want an unmedicated birth and I want it to be quick and pain-free, like, I need more detail. I need more clarity. What does that look like? That feels still it's specific, but it's still vague, right? So you've got to get clear on your goals together. What do you expect from your partner? Having these conversations together is important. If you're like, hey, babe, I really need you to support me and I just need you to be there for me. But then you're in labor and they're like, you're doing such a good job and you're so strong, and like their voice annoys you, then they're not supporting you the way that you want to be supported, right? So you're going to have, and you might not know these things until you're in labor, and that's okay. But starting to think through and practice, because you can practice some of these things. We practice these things all, together in my program. But like, you have to be specific. With my husband, I love his presence, love him dearly. Okay. He has brought me almost four beautiful babies, right? Helped me make them. But I don't want to hear your voice in labor. Okay. I don't really want you to talk to me. I don't. I've been through this enough times to know, like, give me a compliment here and there, but I don't need you to compliment me after every single wave. I don't need to hear you asking me questions. I just need you to know what I want. And we've talked about that already. Your physical presence is enough for me. Hold my hand, rub my back, get me some water, give me a bite of a snack. But I do not need you to be, babe, you're doing such a good job. You're so strong. You're so beautiful. I would be like, you know what? Leave. Please leave and come back when you get all that out, because I don't need that. I personally don't need that. Okay. But you got to practice that and know that, so that you don't get annoyed. And then you snapping on them in labor, they get offended. And now you feel like your support is out the window. Right. So be very clear. How do you want to backwards plan to get that? So once you do get clear on your vision, how do we backwards plan to work towards that vision, right? We have to obviously get through our mind, right? Get our mind in the right place, our spirit, our hearts in the right place. But you also have to be able to communicate that with each other, communicate that with your provider, any nurses, anybody else, your doula, whoever's going to be in the room with you. Be very clear and be very specific on what those roles are for each person. Like, I want partner to do this. I want my mom to do this. I want my kids to do this. I want, be very clear on how you want people to support you. Now, within my program, we have multiple plans. So getting clear on a plan is important. But for my clients, we have multiple plans because things can change, right? And so we're not just planning for like that dream birth, we're planning for the C-section too. And I do believe that that's very important, because if you want that support, that unwavering support from your partner and even your provider, it's very important, as somebody who's had a C-section before, to have a plan for a C-section, right? Not that we want that, and not that we're speaking it into existence, but you're also being smart and being prepared for multiple scenarios, because things can happen. Now, number 3, first, remember, we'll go back for a second. Number 1 is fighting your fears. Number 2 is getting clear on your goals. Step number 3 is changing your outlook and your language about this experience. If you are going to adopt the language of society when it comes to birth, if you're going to adopt and internalize the experience that many women have in our society about birth, this will not be a positive experience for you. And you will be having an uphill battle in labor. The words you use and the way you look at it matters. If we're going to describe birth as painful, it is absolutely going to be painful. There's somebody who commented on one of my posts, on one of my videos recently, saying it was really wrong of me to use the word pain-free about labor, and that women need to know it's going to be excruciating. And I'm sorry, I will never agree with that statement. I just won't. I have had a painful birth before, so I know painful births exist. And I've also had a pain-free birth, and I know that those exist too. Both of those things exist. Neither one of them are wrong. Neither one of them mean that you've done something wrong or something right, but they both exist. So convincing a woman that birth has to be pain-free, or convincing a woman that she must be in excruciating pain in order to deliver a child, is dangerous. Changing your language and your outlook on birth is necessary. what language do you want to use to describe this experience? Because how you speak about it is likely to come true. If you're like, oh, I know birth is going to be painful. The number of first-time moms who I talk to who are like, well, I know birth is going to be painful. Well, how do you know? You never given birth before. How do you know it's going to be painful? You don't. You never done it before. Or I know that it's like, I know that I can have a pain-free birth. I believe in that. But you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to believe that that's possible. And if you do experience pain, even though you say and you describe your birth as being pain-free or desiring for it to be pain-free, doesn't mean that we lose everything that we've worked towards, right? There's things and there's techniques and there's tools that we use to keep you comfortable so that it can be pain-free. But you can also do hard things. And if it's painful, then we adjust and we work through that pain and keep you as comfortable through that pain as possible. But you have to change your language. Talking about it's going to be painful. Yeah, it's going to be painful. If you say, if this woman who comments talking about it's going to be excruciating, yeah, your birth is probably going to be excruciating. If that's how you believe that it's going to be, it is going to be excruciating. I hate that that's how we look at it, but like, that's what it's probably going to be for you. I am very big on the power of prayer and the power of the tongue. I prayed for a pain-free birth. I did not pray for a pain-free birth in my second because I didn't know that existed. But I did pray for a pain-free birth with my third. Supernatural Childbirth is one of my favorite books. I have a video coming out about that soon. But Supernatural Childbirth is one of my favorite books. And she and another friend of mine were the ones who introduced this idea of pain-free birth. And then there's like other resources out there. But once I started to really like pray for that and believe that I could have that, it happened. And it's not to say birth was not intense, right? Even my second birth was intense. I wouldn't call it like excruciating, but it was intense. But once I prayed and claimed like what I was, like I had done the work, but I hadn't asked for that in my second pregnancy or second birth. It happened. Like, and it happened with my second because I was so confident. I wasn't afraid. My team supported what I was going for. And I was very connected to my source, right? In order to have a faith-filled birth, you're going to have to use the language that God uses in scripture, right? We all get stuck on this, like there will be pain in childbirth, right? And I'm not a theologian. I don't want anybody to like look at me in that way. But what I have seen is that a lot of the things that we hold on to were taken away when Jesus came and he died. And for me, that is my belief. And I had to hang on to that to be like, no, I don't have to have a painful birth. God told me not to fear. So I'm not going to fear pain because he told me I'm not going to need to fear pain. I mean, not fear pain, but I don't need to fear. He said that way more times than God said, you're going to have pain in childbirth. Like if you just weigh out the number of times it's said in scripture, like there's impact and there's significance in that. Whether you're a believer or not, it is about your mindset. And so if we're going to have a faith-filled birth, if we're going to trust what we pray for and do the work to get what we prayed for and trust that God is going to support us through that, you're going to have to change your language. You're going to have to fill yourself up with positive birth stories. You're going to have to view positive birth stories. You're going to have to be around people who see birth in a positive light. You're going to have to change how you perceive this experience, especially if you've never done it before. You might also have to cut some people off because the reality is not everybody can handle what you're about to do because they don't believe that it's even possible, for one. And for two, you might be the first person to ever help them see that what you're talking about, what you're planning for can happen. Because even people like myself who share stories on the internet, they think are lies. You might have to be the first person to prepare yourself to change the narrative of birth for generations to come. And that starts with your mind and your mouth. Okay? You have to change your language. And I hate to like hone on that so much, but it is so important, right? Because even as a doula, I still have to protect my mind because I see births all the time. And thankfully, the majority of my clients, if not all of them, even if it changes, you see things and it can scare you sometimes. And you hear stories, and it can be scary because those are real people stories. But that doesn't mean it has to be yours, because every single birth is different. Every pregnancy that you have is going to be different as well. All right. Step number 4. Build your foundation of knowledge together, right? So this is you and your partner. First, we talked about y'all got to get clear on your vision. What do you want this to look like? How are we working towards that? Backwards planning. Now, once you start to backwards plan, that's where the knowledge piece comes into play, right? Faith without works is dead. Okay? Faith without works is dead. You should be praying for the type of birth that you desire. You should be talking to God about the type of birth that you desire and having him give you his supernatural strength and power and guidance in that, and trusting him too if something changes, right? He didn't fail you if your birth doesn't go exactly how you put it on paper. However, the building blocks that you're going to have to do outside of your prayer is you're going to have to do some work, because this is a two-way street, right? You don't just get to like, God, I pray for $1 million and like $1 million goes to your bank account tomorrow. That's just not, no, that doesn't happen. You're going to have to work for that $1 million. And it might be because God gave you an idea or a business idea, but that's the same thing that happens when it comes to birth. Like, you're still going to have to do the work to make the vision clear and plain and to come true. So y'all need to build your foundation of knowledge together. You should not be giving your partner the Cliff Notes version of everything you just learned, because they're not going to be equipped if you can't speak. We don't want you to have to talk much in labor because you're giving birth to a baby. So y'all got to find some sort of education. I do not recommend hospital birth classes. Now, you can do it so you understand what your hospital is all about, what you can expect from the hospital, all the things. But going through a hospital birth class and expecting all the things that we just talked about so far to come true from that hospital birth class, highly unlikely. Hospital birth classes are meant to help you understand how to be a good patient, not how to be a good or effective birthing mom. That's just not what they're set up to do. And they only have so much time with you anyways, right? You're going to have to find, like I was saying in the beginning of this webinar, find the voice that aligns with you. Sometimes you find 2, right? But I would encourage you to limit that voice or the number of voices that you hear so that you don't get overwhelmed with too much information. You need to be preparing for all scenarios of birth. You need to be preparing for the what ifs. You need to be preparing for the type of experience that you have desired, that you have, gotten a vision about, and then somebody who can actually help you get there, who's done it before, who has helped other people do it before, right? This is a real process. And unfortunately, as much as God designed our bodies to do this, we live in a society that fights that narrative every single day, that has made birth a medical event, that has made birth an emergency that needs to be monitored all of the time. If you want to know how to birth best, you should watch how animals birth. Animals are the best representation of what birth is supposed to look like. Yes, we live different lives. We are not animals, okay? But if you want to know how people should be birthing, how we are designed to birth, outside of high-risk situations, of course, watch an animal give birth. They are usually by themselves. They are usually in a quiet place, and they are patient. They start to freak out when too many people come around, or people or a herd. Now, if you think about how we give birth, we are surrounded by people. Somebody is touching us every 30 minutes. That is not a physiological birth. And I'm not saying that all of you want that. But what I am saying is that you're going to need to understand the process of birth if you're going to birth in the most natural, physiological way possible. And that comes from somebody who's going to teach you how to do that. And then also teach you how to navigate your reality, especially if you're giving birth in the hospital, and making sure that you're with the best providers and that your partner can be your voice in the space, because each of you has a role, but you got to be knowledgeable on that role. My husband was not knowledgeable on that role. We were in a hospital birth class our first pregnancy. And the man was on his phone watching football because the class felt like a substitute teacher in high school. We literally were watching a DVD that looked like it was from 1997. And I was like, this was not $250. Like, and I'm paying attention, but I'm really not paying attention because it's so boring. And now I know why my husband couldn't support me, because like we're all about to fall asleep. Come on, y'all. Like this, you could have sent this to me in an email. Okay. So find the space, the people, the type of knowledge that you both will be able to resonate with. So much so that your partner could go tell his or her friends, how to be a good partner. And so many of my clients, they are daddy doulas by the end of our time together in terms of learning. We call them daddy doulas because they start learning all this stuff, no lie. And they start asking questions. Now, when when you start asking questions that like, I'm just teaching you something, you're starting to ask like deep rooted questions, you really are getting it. It's like resonating with you. And when I see these dads, they're like, well, why would this? Or why would that? I'm like, that's a good question. I have the answer, but I want you to know the answer for yourself because it matters to you that much more. And when something matters to you, you fight for it a little bit harder than just a memorization of a fact. And that's the type of knowledge that you need, especially if you want to have more than one kid, because this process is going to continue on more than just this experience. So you want to have a positive one so that you don't fear going into the next one. And we feared going into our second. And it wasn't until we learned all this stuff that we were like, oh, we can do this again. That's why I want to have so many kids. I mean, I love having kids, but I love birth. My husband, on the other hand, is like, girl, chill out. We're done. But here we are 4 kids later. All right. Last thing, step number 5, practice. And I know that's like not this, I told y'all this is not like mind blowing, never heard this before, but it's simple. It can be very simple. Does not have to be complicated. It feels complicated when you're like trying to weave through all these Google articles and Instagram pages and birth stories, but it really doesn't have to be that complicated. The last thing you got to do is practice all the things we just talked about. You practicing fighting your fears, because just because you do them right now does not mean they're not going to come up again. There's a good chance they're going to come up again, especially in that late part of your 3rd trimester. The enemy likes to get busy around this time, okay? The enemy likes to get busy probably around like 34 weeks. Enemy comes in and is like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? Your mind starts to go and wander all around. All the work that you've done. Literally just had a conversation with one of my moms yesterday. She's like, the enemy was trying to attack me. My mind, I'm just like getting all these doubts all of a sudden. That's normal. That happened to me too, this pregnancy. Like, oh my God, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I really do this again? That is where you get to see, did you do the work? Because all the work that you did to fight those fears, you're going to have to practice that again now, because this is your mental test to see if you're really ready for birth, because your fears will try to come up again in birth. Even though you work through them, they'll try to come up again in labor. But do you have something to fight them? Do you have the fact to be like, nope, I already know I'm not going to tear because blah, 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 blah. Or I'm less likely to tear because blah, 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 right? I got to make sure that I breathe. If somebody tells me to hold my breath and push, I'm going to say, I got this, We got to practice making sure that we are going through our birth plan and that we both know it. That your partner, if you don't say a word in labor, can speak up and answer questions for you. Are they practicing that in appointments? Are they speaking up and asking questions in appointments? Or are they just sitting there and being like, nope, no questions? Practice. You need to practice this stuff so that it becomes second nature in labor. Especially for you, mama, because all the things that you're learning, those need to be even more second nature for you, because your brain needs to be turned off in labor, which sounds weird because you're like, oh, Chanel, but you just told me to learn all these things. Yeah, I need you to learn them so that they become second nature. So you don't have to look at a note sheet in labor. you've practiced it enough in pregnancy that you can just do it in labor because it feels natural. And that's how you birth quickly and easily, when you turn your brain off and you stop trying to think your way to the finish line. You need to practice your language, of course. We talked about that. Practice the knowledge that you're learning, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the mental tactics, breathing techniques, the movements that you are learning. You need to practice those so that your body and your mind just work in sync when you're in labor, and your partner works in sync with all of that in labor, and he or she knows how to follow you in that process. And they don't have to ask, well, what do you want? How can I help you? No. You don't need to ask me how you can help me. You already know how to help me because you know how to be my birth coach. You're my daddy doula. You know what to do. We've practiced this already. And if you guys are doing what you're supposed to do, it can be so simple. It's just a part of building your relationship to be even more trusting of one another in big moments. And this is one of the biggest moments of your life. So you want to practice that. All that being said, these are the 5 steps to having a faith-filled, family-centered, because this is all about the 2 of you. I don't care who else is in the room. If you choose to have a doula in the room, amazing. Love to be in the room with moms. But I have seen over the last 4 years that I don't have to be in order for this experience to be true. I have supported moms in France, in Germany, in the United States, and I don't live in any of those places. Oh, I live in the United States, but I don't live in the States, the other states. Uh-oh. Sorry, y'all. Thank you, Jim, out for a second. But I haven't had to be in those places. So the more you guys have this support and not trying to do all this on your own, right? The more you have this support, the better chance you'll have at this sort of experience. If you haven't noticed already, or if you haven't gotten any of my emails or updates, my Work Your Birth program is now in a self-paced format. And it is there to give you all these steps, but obviously going way deeper with way more detail and giving you the step-by-step to make sure that you have everything that you need to get to that final step. If you guys are interested in that, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and that will allow you to enroll. If you do choose to enroll, you will have access to a discounted rate. And if you do choose to enroll today, I'm going to extend our bonuses that expired 2 days. What's today? Thursday? Expired, 2 days ago, which would allow you to have a coaching call with me with a small group of women and families to be able to answer these questions and give you some guidance as you walk through the coursework. And you'll also have my guide to doing all of this stuff and making sure that you have the resources and the tools and the support to have a very natural first year of motherhood and navigating all of those complications and challenges that come with raising a whole human. If you do want to take advantage of that, you just have to make sure that you're enrolled by the end of today. And you can use launch week at checkout to get a discount, a special discount for the lowest rate that this course will ever be. I have not offered this course in this capacity for 2 years because I've been working so closely with clients. But I've seen that, even with just the knowledge, clients are getting everything that they need. So all that being said, we put all of the links in the chat for you guys to have. I also am sending out some information via email, so you may be able to see it through that as well. But I want to open up some space for questions to see if you guys have anything that I can support you with or answer, or any questions about anything that I said today. I'm going to read some of these comments. Yes, Brenda, this is not being taught in appointments. It's really frustrating. But the reality is, especially for OBs, they're just not being taught this in med school. And so a lot of the things that, unfortunately, a lot of our obstetricians are operating by are outdated research. And that is how they support their clients, because they see this as a medical event that has to be highly monitored. And then you don't learn these things until after the fact, when you're like, oh, I just did it because that's what they said was best. And then you realize in some cases, it wasn't what was best for mom and baby. It was just most convenient for our providers. It's not always the case, but you obviously want to know for yourself so that you don't have to rely on other people. Oh, one of my clients, actually a few of my clients are here. Yes, Jessica. Oh my gosh. Jessica is amazing. She had 3 C-sections, came to me, was like, hey, I'm trying to do a VBAC for my 4th baby. And she did it. Like, she did it, y'all. And that is like very unheard of. She did this, just her and her husband. She did it at a hospital. But totally unheard of to having having a VBAC after 3 C-sections, like so taboo. And her story is so, so powerful. I can't wait to share it with y'all. Of like just the uphill battle that she had with even the providers, like trying to convince her that they weren't going to do it. And she was like, look, I'm about to have this baby vaginally. Like, I'm doing all the work, going to all my appointments. Everything looks good. I have no complications. And she did that. So I just want you to know, even if you're having a VBAC, like, you can still, in most cases, there's some where, it's just obviously not safe for you to have a VBAC. But in many cases, I've supported so many women who have had 2 and 3 C-sections, and we still get that vaginal birth, y'all. Like, it is possible. Do not let the words, we just talked about it, don't let the words overwhelm you and change your path of what you know is possible for your body. All right. Lisa, yes, I am so excited. Yes, Lisa and I go back. But congratulations on number 2. That is so exciting, and a home birth. And I also want y'all to notice, so Lisa, I think, had her first baby in the hospital. And she is hoping for a home birth this time. And I am not telling you guys where to birth. You should birth wherever you feel most comfortable. But I talk to a lot of moms, and they're like, well, I just want to have I just want to do the hospital for my first time because I just feel like it, just in case something happens, which, like, I want y'all to feel there's no judgment in this at all. I am just saying, notice a lot of moms who have multiple kids who give birth unmedicated, start in the hospital, and then they end at home. Like, after multiple kids, they're like moving to the house. So I want y'all to just notice that trend and figure out if that even feels comfortable for you, of course. But like, notice that trend. Why do you think we start off in a hospital, myself included, all of the what ifs, and then by 2nd, 3rd babies, they're like, not everybody, but a lot of people, especially in this community, are like, we're gonna just stay out of the hospital this time. And in most cases, nothing is different about your body between the first baby and the 2nd baby or the 3rd baby. And so, if it's something that you're like, I think I might want to do a home birth for, or a birth center for like my 2nd or my 3rd, I would just encourage you to talk to a midwife or a birth center. Well, a midwife at a birth center, or a midwife who does home birth, and just express your concerns with them and let them just talk to you about the real experience of having an out-of-hospital birth. And that doesn't mean that you need to go with them, but I always tell my clients, like, if you're even considering it a little bit, you can always say no. Like, oh, I feel like I'd rather be in the hospital, but at least know what your options are, and at least know, like, at least I know what this offers and what this offers, and I can make the decision that feels best for me for this birth. But there is a reason that a lot of us start off in hospitals and then end up in our homes or in a birth center. And if I would have known what I know now, I would have started off at least in a birth center, because I think it could have helped me avoid a lot of the birth trauma that I had for my first. Eritrea. Oh, that's my other client. Hey, girl. I hopefully just answered the question, though, between birth centers and hospitals. If I didn't, let me know and I can go further into detail. Tips to recover from a C-section: scar tissue mobilization. There's lots of videos on YouTube about that. I know I just told y'all to, like, not search a bunch of stuff, but you should be searching, if you're going to search stuff, search specific stuff, right? Where it's like real skill set building. So Body work is one of them. You can go find a body worker, somebody who does myofascial release in person. Second, you can find a pelvic floor therapist. You can find a pelvic floor therapist. They can also help you with scar tissue mobilization and recovering your pelvic floor from a C-section. And then you can do C-section scar tissue mobilization on your own at home to help work through some of that scar tissue, which is really important so that it doesn't get in the way of baby when they are trying to be born. I had to do a lot of that myself too. All right. Let me see what this last comment says. Every birth has been in the hospital. I'm opting for a free birth at this point, 36 weeks. I'm here for it. I'm here for a free birth. If you haven't listened to the last birth story that I put on my channel, she was one of my clients and she had a free birth, and it was literally so beautiful. So I definitely, okay, you watched it. I was like, she did that thing. But she knew very early on, because of her first experience, go figure, that she was like, I'm staying in my own space of peace, but I need to know how to do this so I can be obviously responsible and safe for my child. All right. Any other questions, y'all? I love the conversation happening in the comments. Jessica, we got to get you on here so we can share your story. All right, let's see. Going to do a home birth, moving my faith. How do you feel about someone giving a natural birth? Okay. How do you feel about some giving a natural birth if they had a stillbirth due to a lack of knowledge? Do you have a plan just geared towards that? So every pregnancy is different, which is hard, especially after having a stillbirth. And I have witnessed that as a doula and seeing clients go through that experience, which is really, really, really hard. It was hard for me, and it wasn't even my baby. It was hard for me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a very, very traumatizing experience. That being said, the biggest thing to work through, unless there was like a significant reason why that stillbirth happened that you can obviously work through, and that's like, if you in particular have that like stillbirth happened because this, then that's something that obviously you can work through, knowing that, significant piece of information. If there was no answer as to why this happened, which in some cases, depending on how far along you were, can be the case where like sometimes things just happen and we don't have control over them. I try to encourage you to treat any pregnancy as your first, because every pregnancy is different. I want you to try to work through that trauma in that fear piece that we talked about first. That's like that. If we were working together, that would be where I would start, because I would say, hey, that is a real traumatic experience. And for some of us who've had C-sections, those might have been traumatic. And not even, some births, not even C-sections, can be very traumatic. And in order for us to move forward and even accept this as a new experience, you are going to have to heal from that miscarriage. So there's no like outside of the healing journey of like specifically like this is the real healing that we have to do for your miscarriage or your first birth experience. The process of preparing you for birth does not change. It is the exact same of the things that you need to know to advocate for yourself, for those things to be avoided again, to trust your body again after having such a difficult experience. So I hope that answers your question. But the biggest thing is like really working through for yourself, like we're having another baby. And in order for me to accept this as a new experience, I have to work and heal from this other one so that I don't freeze up or freak out in labor and have a ton of anxiety, which can increase your blood pressure and increase risk of complications and make this whole second experience or whatever number full of complications that make me fear this happening again. So I hope that answered your question. And I can obviously help you through that if you need support. So you can sign up for a call with me if you need to. Any advice for C-sections? You should be preparing for a gentle C-section. If you're preparing for a C-section, if you have a scheduled C-section and that's what you're moving towards, definitely make sure that you are understanding what a gentle C-section looks like, talking to your provider about that, if that's what you desire, and making sure that the environment ambiance matches what you want, because C-sections can still be very beautiful and you can still have immediate skin to skin and all the things, especially if it's scheduled, because we're not in an emergency situation, a true emergency situation, because 50% of emergency C-sections are not emergent. Yes, Supernatural Childbirth is by Jackie Mize. Due early December. What is your go-to preparing your body for birth? I go through all this in my course, but it is making sure that you are staying active, you are getting in the right positions, you're making sure that you understand how to work with your body at the appropriate time in labor to help your baby descend. There's a lot of things that go into that. All that is in the course. So, if you want more like details, workout guides, that kind of thing, all that is in the course to make sure that you are practicing being in the right positions for labor, but then also how to move instead of just like squatting in labor and doing like lunges in labor for no reason, because you could completely kill your energy in labor just like pulling out all these moves you saw on YouTube, but not at the right time. Okay. Was this helpful, y'all? Was this helpful? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the chat so I know that this was helpful for y'all. And thanks for being flexible on the link situation, because technology can be a little complicated sometimes. All right. Love it. Love all the hearts. Love y'all. So great. Okay. Any last questions before we hop off of here? This will be saved. So you can go back and rewatch it. When am I due? Next week. Next week. I am 39 weeks today. So my due date is in 1 week. We shall see. I am not kicking this baby out, but mama is ready. So we're ready whenever this baby is. Thank you guys. You're so sweet. I was telling our community yesterday, we were on our call yesterday. No, Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is. That's pregnancy brain. I got my braids done. So now for those of you who get, if you know. But now that the braids are in, I am officially labor ready. Like, come on, baby, you can come today because you already know. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for your prayers and your kind words. Look at this and rewatch it as many times as you need to. Remember that the course, if you want to have that coaching call with me, you got to enroll today. So if you want to enroll, the discount is launch week. Put that at checkout. The link is in the chat, or you can go to any of the emails that I've sent lately and you can get it from that as well. I also, for those of you who we were talking about supernatural childbirth and you were looking at the book, I just posted a video yesterday on how I had a supernatural childbirth. So you guys can check that video out as well, just as more information and resources. And the link to the book is in there too. But love y'all. You're amazing. So proud of you for getting on here and learning in the middle of your day. Some of you might be at work pretending like you're working, but you're not. And I love you for that, because this is more important in most cases. Anyways, y'all have a phenomenal rest of your day. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Let me know. Otherwise, I will see you later. Bye.